Hi, everybody. It's season 2, episode 9 of PocaTV Live. Special guest this month is privileged fighter of privilege, Joris Luyendijk. Here we go.
Give me this. Give me that. Give me this. Give me that. Give me that.
If you can see me, yes, here I am. Hi again, everybody. Welcome to this 9th episode in this second season of PocaTV Live. I'm so happy to have you with me. As you know, I always have a very special guest, one of my fabulous friends from all across the globe, and I share with you the wonderful stuff that they do to make this a better world for you and me to live in. This month, we have the fighter of privilege, born into utter privilege himself, the writer of this book, the 7 in Dutch. I have translated it to the 7 checks. I think he calls them the 7 ticks, but a tick makes me think of something else, so I keep it at 7 checks. He has written this book about his own privilege and how he found out that he had it, and he now spreads the world across other people with utter privilege and tries to make them see what their position is in life and basically how they abuse it is what I call it. Before I get to him, I do the normal stuff that you know I do. First of all, as always, a livication to my sister Aisha Hunkar, who left this earth in 2011, which is, it's almost getting to be 12 years since she passed. And my biggest fan on Poca TV always telling me, you know what, one day you'll be going live. And here I am going live. And she actually said that before going live was even a technical option. So yes, this was a night out with friends, and you can tell that she was my bestie because there she is holding a camera in her hand, which is basically what my friends always tell me. Can you for once put away your camera so that, you know, we can have a chat? But Aisha loved taking pictures herself, which is great, which is why I have so many pictures of her to share with you every month. So yes, Aisha, never forgotten. And as always, this one is livicated to you. A shout out to my regular viewers. I don't think there's many of you yet in the comment section. I do see Evelyn there already agreeing with me that a tick is what dogs get. Thank you for that, Evelyn. I hope you'll be here with questions later on, because I know that you are quite interested in what Joris Luyendijk has to say. Yes, today is a special day, I have to say. Today is the birthday of the best male friend any woman could have. His name is Adam Lewis. We all know him as DJ Conscious. Today is his 60th birthday. Many happy returns to you, Adam. Hope you live to see many, many, many more, and that we can continue having our wonderful adventures in Jamaica. DJ Conscious, for those of you who don't know, Adam Lewis is how I know him. And it's his birthday today. Happy, happy birthday, Adam. A warm welcome to anybody new watching. Maybe some of Joris's friends are watching today. How are you today? Yes, we do this in English because Joris has been interviewed about a gazillion times in Dutch. And I think it's high time that he got, his word out in English as well, so that people across the globe can benefit from his insights on having total privilege, how you get it, and more specifically, if you ask me, what you can do with it. So welcome all. Hope you have fun. I do love it when you join in the conversation. The way to do that is to drop a comment in the comment section, either the live chat on YouTube or the comment section on Facebook. I don't know where you are watching. Just drop your comments. And there's another way that you can join. If you really, really, really think you have something to contribute to the program, you can join Joris and myself in the studio by scanning this QR code. Hold your phone horizontally, people. This is horizontally, not like this. This is for Facebook and Instagram. This is for PocaTV Live because we have widescreen, broad screen. So hold it horizontally, scan the code on your phone, and it will take you to my online studio where you get prompted to enter your name and to check whether or not you allow your microphone and your camera to be used. You just allow everything, put in your name, enter the studio, and you'll be here waiting in the orange room backstage until I, pop you up in the program. There's another way for people watching on their laptops, which is what I really, really prefer. You cannot scan the code, but you can use this URL. It's case sensitive, all capital letters, PTVL, Poca TV Live, 0209 is season 2, episode 9. Use that URL. It will take you to my studio, and the same thing applies. Allow for your microphone and your camera to be used. Enter your name and enter the studio. So maybe some of you will be with us later on. Let's hope for the best, expect the worst. That's how I always see it. You're very welcome to join. That's all I have to say. So high time to bring him out now. I told him about 8 minutes, but it's a little sooner than normal because he has such a long story to tell. And I hope he will, pace himself today, not talk too fast, because we can take all night if we have to. I have nothing else to do today than do this program. So let's just introduce him. His name, he's hailing from the Netherlands. I forgot to upload the map of the Netherlands, but people, you know where the Netherlands are. You really do know that. So he's hailing from the Netherlands, and he's joining me now. Please say hello to anthropologist, journalist, author, and privileged fighter of privilege, Joris Luyendijk. Joris, welcome. How are you today?
I am fine. Thank you, Aldit. It's good to be here.
It's really great to be here, to have you here, because I've been asking you for a couple of months, but there was always something very important, more important than this program to do. And even today, I must, settle this with you once and for all. This is the first time I'm not broadcasting live at 6 p.m. CET. We started at 8 because you, Joris, asked me to do that because you definitely had to watch the Netherlands play Ecuador in the World Cup. Well, how did that work out for you today, Joris?
Oh yeah, it was a terrible match. But I would not have been. I would not have been focused had I started at 6, knowing that the orange.
Knowing that they were playing. Okay, I forgive you. And in fact, I'm going to give my viewers the chance to tell me if this is a better time for them, because I chose 6 p.m. CET because I have friends in Asia who watch, and it's 3 a.m. there now, or 4 a.m. depending on where they live. But I do know that most of my viewers are in Europe or on the other side of the Atlantic. So let me know in the comment section if this is a better time for you. And, this is a democracy, I believe. So if most of you prefer 8 o'clock CET, let me know and we'll do that. Starting in the new year, not next month. In the new year, we'll start doing that. Joris, I'm seeing so many comments come in already and we haven't even started. Let's see if, here's a DJ Conscious, the birthday boy. Yes, I don't know if you saw that, DJ, but I did hail you up for your birthday. One rule to all, please do not provide English USA updates because a man from England living in Jamaica, is not watching the match because he is here live, Joris. Learn from Adam.
Yes, Adam was so welcome. Actually, there's such an interesting match coming up between Iran and the United States, because the Iranian team is now in real danger when they come back. If they lose to the US, then everybody will be grumpy, and it will be very easy for the regime to go after them. But if they win, after having refused to sing the anthem out of protest, but then they beat the big Satan, America, it will be impossible. It will be impossible for the regime to lock them up. And there'll be this immense street party because they've beaten America. So this is actually the final. America-Iran is the final, and it's the political final. It's amazingly exciting. And it's because Iran just beat Wales yesterday.
Yes, they did. They played a pretty. I didn't see it, Joris, because I was preparing for this, and also I had some other work to do. So, but I believe from what I read that it was a nice match. Iran was really going for it, weren't they?
Well, yes. Well, there's so much at stake for them.
Right.
Because Iran is in the middle of what could turn out to be the next revolution. They've taken an unbelievably courageous stand, quite different from the Dutch, who said we're really in favor of LGBTQ plus rights unless you give us a yellow card. Then we're no longer in
I
favor
know.
of those
But
rights.
I can say it to you because I know you can take a punch or two. But the Dutch are real wimps, aren't they? Throughout history, Joris, they've always been wimps. They've always backed out of anything big in the world, unless they get to make money from it.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. But still, enlightened indifference, giving the Jews the right to build a temple, allowing the French in, the Huguenots, and it's a mix.
But that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago.
Okay, the first country to give equal rights in terms of marriage to gay people. Abortion, euthanasia, soft drugs. It's true.
Yeah.
They could.
No, all of this is actually true, but we don't actually see that in society. We haven't seen that in society for, I'm saying 10 years. It's probably longer.
I agree. And the Dutch national team today was like the Netherlands. It was just out of ideas.
Out of
it's
ideas.
The same stuff, but now it's just no longer working.
Right.
But there we go.
Well, we're going to talk about so much today, including probably the ramifications of the Dutch psyche on football. But as you might or might not know, Joris, this program is all about my guests. So I shine a bright spotlight on them. And I do tend to be a little picky here and there. So I'm going to tease you a little because, once again, you're a big boy and you can take a punch. So I'm going to needle you here and there. But we're going to talk about your book and what it has meant to you to write it. And before we get to that, we really need to know a little bit more about you. And here's another thing in which you are different from all the guests I've had in these two seasons. You are fiercely private, which I can understand in your position, but you have not shared with me, for many reasons, the pictures of you as a must have been impossibly cute baby. We don't know where you grew up. We don't know what your parents looked like. We don't know anything about you except that you were born into total privilege. So I had to do a couple of things myself. No, you can rest assured I did not find baby pictures of you. I did look for them. I did. But to show the world in what kind of nest you were born, I must put up this picture of your aunt and your uncle, who were both politicians in the Netherlands, so I'm sure you won't mind me sharing these pictures. Loes van Hof Luyendijk and her husband Henk van Hof, both conservative politicians, very high up, very prestigious people. I do notice that your aunt carries the Luyendijk without a Y, but with the Dutch IJ, meaning that she's from the poor side of the family. Am I right in saying that, Joris?
No, you're wrong. No, it's my name is spelled the same way, but this is my with a Y. It's my artist name.
I see.
It saves you time when you spell it out for people.
Especially when you're abroad.
Luy is much easier.
Okay, so now I know you are not the rich part of the family, and they are the poor people who, kind of made a career for themselves. You're on level pegging.
I don't know. I think they were the in terms of. Henk van Hof was a governor, and I think he was very high up in the Liberal Party, conservative Liberal Party. Mm-hmm. And Loes, my uncle Loes, who was my father's sister, yes. She was the first working mother in the Amsterdam City Council. As this happens time and again, it's the conservatives and the liberals who field female candidates far sooner than the Labour Party.
How can you explain that?
It's just striking. Look at the SPD in Germany, the Parti Socialiste in France. Look at the PvdA in the Netherlands. Look at Labour. It's just the same long line of white men, and the PvdA had a number of female leaders, but already there's a new 70 men lining up. Frans
Yes.
Timmermans. I
Frans
think it's
Timmermans. Oh gosh, I hope he doesn't get to be it. Oh gosh, really, never mind.
lefties really struggle with sort of owning their words, if you like.
They do. So it is striking that it is always the Liberal Party who has at least women first in every single spot that they need to be.
Thatcher, May, Truss, Merkel, Sophie Wilmès in Belgium, Nelly Kroes in the Netherlands, the most successful Dutch female politician so far, also from the Liberal Conservatives.
I hadn't actually made that equation, but you're perfectly right. It's true. So well, we've said that now. I know you were born in Amsterdam, but you grew up in Hilversum, which is the city where I live. People who know where I live can see my apartment building. I'm not showing it though, but I live in the center of town. I don't think you did. Did you live in the lush parts? I'm here. I am full of what's the word, Joris? Prejudices. Putting a golden spoon in your mouth. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, so my friends from football considered the house my parents lived in a so-called 30s house fast, because they were just sharing a one-floor apartment with their families. But my fellow students at the gymnasium, they said, "Oh, you live across from the tracks. You live in the poor part of town, and
which is where all the immigrants live and the poor people."
No, well, it's sort of middle class. Hilversum is a strange place because it has these lush parts and the very, very, very rich, but also dirt poor. Well, I always thought we were in the middle until I realized, no, we were quite high up, so 2/3 or something. But many of my schoolmates in the gymnasium, they had huge villas with freestanding large gardens. That's not where we live.
And a piece of wood behind there in the backyard.
Yes.
Not
all of them, but quite a few. Yeah.
So what made you realize that actually you were 2/3 and not half?
I think when I learned about it's called laaggeletterdheid. So it would be in Dutch. It would be in English something like functionally illiterate. So you do know how to spell, and you do know how to sort of read letter by letter, but it's any text of complexity, let alone helping your children do their homework, is way beyond you. And so 1 in 6 adults in the Netherlands right now is functionally illiterate. And
that's a huge number.
That's a huge number. By some counts, 1 in 4 leaves secondary school functionally illiterate. And that takes place entirely outside the view of the middle class. And I was in that middle class, so I just wasn't aware of the underclass. If you include those, then I'm well at 2/3. But this is what happens to men like me, because we're surrounded by people who have even more. We tend to think that we're quite modest.
I see. Yes, we're really going to dive deep into that, Joris. But we have to take it slow for people who don't know you, because we in the Netherlands all know you, but outside they don't. So let's see, where are we? When you left school, when you left gymnasium, I believe you went to the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, for a year.
You went
one of those exchange programs, NACI.
Right, and what was that? What kind of education was that?
Well, so it was at the University of Kansas, and so for a year I could just pick all of these subjects that I could never do in the Netherlands. So acting, public speaking, fiction writing, film, philosophy, those sort of things. It was fantastic. It was 1990. The Gulf War had just broken out, in the sense that a couple of weeks before I flew to the US with Jordan Air, Saddam had invaded Kuwait. And the university had a large ROTC program, meaning there were quite a few students there who were put through college by the army. And at some point, many of them left to fight. And still, most students were just utterly uninterested in the war. They didn't follow the war. They didn't watch anything. There were no newspapers. It was a really useful introduction to Middle America. So I've never fallen in love with, say, New York the way others have, because I know New York is not America.
I really don't like New York, to be honest. Yeah, but how did you get to go to that college? Why? How?
Also, there was an exchange program. This was well before internet, and so there was a little leaflet hanging on the corridor, saying, if you have at least, I think, a 7.5 or an 8 on average in 5th grade, then you can apply, and there are scholarships and so on. You also have to pay some of your own. And I applied. Every year, my school supplied, say, 3 or 4 students.
I see.
And that year, I was among them.
Mm-hmm. And when you left, your parents gave you this.
Yeah.
What was the idea behind this? That's you in the picture.
After so much pressure, I relented and I gave you something. So this was I think this kind of illustrates middle class privilege really well, because not only did they help me apply and did they give me the confidence that this was within reach for someone like me, but they also gave me $1,000. $1,000, yeah.
1,000.
1,000, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of the sort of meeting the regular costs through an allowance, as a kind of extra. And then there was another uncle, who was quite rich, who also gave me $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helped. That just it's these little pushes. I would be there 12 months, so then it's $85 a month. Still, it's these little pushes that you receive at the beginning of your life that are very easy to forget. Many people talk about themselves as self-made, but it's these little things you get that give you this head start that pays out years later.
Yeah. And if nothing else, it gives you confidence, doesn't it? Because one way to lose confidence fast is when you have no money in your pocket.
Yeah. And it was very difficult to get a job there, because we were only allowed to work on campus. So I did work as a what do you call it, spoelkeuken? So doing the dishes.
Yeah, he did the dishes in the restaurant.
Female fraternity, female dormitory, together with a Russian, a Tunisian, and some foreigners, and that's
so
what.
That must have been your first experience, really, with foreign people, with people from other countries.
No, not really, because there were already children my age from so-called guest workers, as they were called then.
Yeah.
So I do remember Ali quite well, who's a Turkish center forward. I was a middle mid, so we played together a lot. And there was Rachet, who was in my nursery, and my best friend at the time was Patrick, who was half Indonesian, half French. But it was at an age, both my age and an era, when skin color was seen as less important than culture. So it was not religion. So someone was Turkish, certainly not Muslim, so Rachet was half Tunisian, but I only saw his mother, and so I know the word colorblind has become very loaded.
It is.
But I think there is an age where children do notice gender difference, but
don't see color. Yes, but that doesn't mean they're color blind. But once again, we'll get into that. It just means that they don't give it a hoot about color. You did mention something about noticing at that age that there are haves and have-nots. And this triggered with me that I haven't shared with you the clip from last month. And that's actually a story you might be interested in. Last month, my guest was Alassane Badji in Gambia, who was born dirt poor, like you were saying. He was actually picked up off the streets by somebody who said, look here, by an organization, we're going to give you an education, and you can follow this course and that workshop and that and that. And Alassane did all of that, and now he's doing quite well. He has his own company in which he builds houses. He's a contractor, but what he also does is share that. And I'd like to share this short little clip of what he had to say last month. Have a look.
I just bought one car, which is on the way coming.
Yeah, you ordered a car from Germany, right?
Yes. That I want to empower one young man. For example, when I have one car, I give it to you individual to be in the traffic. Use the car to be in the traffic at least a day, every day. At least you'll come back home with some money.
Like taxi.
Exactly.
So, Joris, this is something I see a lot in the global South. I see people who make a little money, who climb the social ladder, and what they do is share that around. Like Alassana, he bought a car specifically for other people to be able to run a taxi service so that they can also, grow in life. This is not something we know in the rich West, is it? This sharing around of good fortune.
I think how it works is it works with favors. So beyond a certain level of material success, what you share around is access to interesting people, helping people out with contacts, introducing them, those sort of things. And they
But
are
that's in your
they're immensely valuable.
yes, but that's in your circles, isn't it? That's in those seven tick, seven check circles, which
Yeah.
let me just quickly put it up so people know what we are talking about. What are those seven ticks that Joris has described in his book? Here they are. You have at least one parent who is highly educated and or who is wealthy, at least one parent who was born in the Netherlands. I guess you mean any white country, maybe? Does this go outside of the Netherlands as well?
No, because that refers to color. This is about culture. So
Yes.
if you have one parent with the dominant culture, you are born in the dominant culture, and so you are spared cultural adjustment.
Yes, but I'm because you specified that the parent needs to be born in the Netherlands. But if we were talking about seven Czech people in England, would that be at least one parent born in England?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to be man to have one of those seven Czechs. You need to be hetero, white, highest level of secondary school, and a university education. Those seven ticks get you the privilege that you were born into that most of us don't have. So now we all know we're on the same page as to what those checks are. This is what I was asking you. Do you see that in places where you say that in places where people have seven checks, they share favors and they share their network, but all those people with less checks than the ones that we just showed, they are not in that network, are they? At least I never was. I did pretty well in the Netherlands, but I'm not in one of those circles.
No, so I think student associations are one of the areas where so-called class migrants, so those who are working class people, farmers, sons and daughters, they're the first to go to receive a higher education, if you want to use the word higher education. And so by joining a student association or a corps, they sort of master that part of the customs of the highly educated elite, is how to ask. So you, for example, you never ask a favor for yourself. You ask a favor for others, and others ask favors for you.
So that means if I ask a favor for you, then at some point in time you will be returning the favor by asking somebody else a favor for me.
Exactly.
Right.
Otherwise, it's corruption.
I see. Oh, I call it kind of not nepotism, but friendism.
It's this concept of the favor bank. So you make a deposit by doing someone a favor, and it's not so much that person, specifically that person who returns the favor, but you enter a world in which these favors are passed around, and it's often quite hard to pin down what the favor is. It can just be information, like there's this new job coming up, for example, or so and so isn't happy in her job, or those kinds of. But it's also, for example, a friend of mine who is a class migrant, but her mother came into some money, and her mother died, and now she has an inheritance. And she tells me, I just don't have anyone I can call who can call someone to tell me where to get good advice for an inheritance.
What to do with the money? Yes.
It's these kind of weak social ties that you can draw on. It's for example, in the Netherlands, we were struck by one of the worst scandals of the past few decades, called the toeslagenschandaal, where the tax authorities...
The child benefit scandal, yes?
Child benefit scandal. So the tax authorities, a number of racists there, identified people of color as fraudsters, and kind of the rules were so bad as to drive these people into the ground, and at some point, quite a few lost their children. The children were taken out of their custody because because their finances had become such a mess. And so almost everyone responsible for the scandal is a man like me, a seven-tick man, and I was really curious whether there would be victims with seven ticks. And so I started, putting this out. Like, if anybody who was hit by this scandal has 7 ticks. So one person came forward, and he said he had to sign an NDA. So I have to keep things a bit vague. But he said, I have 7 ticks, and so my wife has 6 ticks, but our children have different names. And at some point, the money came flooding in, and because of those stupid rules, we tried to give the money back, but we did something wrong, and worse, and we lost our children.
Oh,
But
wow.
then
But how did 7 tick people even need those benefits? I struggle to understand.
Well, that's the thing, that these benefits were given to you basically without you applying for them. The rules were so convoluted. The thing was that the rules were made by people who would never have to use them. This is one huge difficulty. If the rules are made by 7 tick men, and women, and 6 tick women, they're made for social classes who they don't belong to the class affected by the rules.
Right.
And so the 7 tick man, he tells me. So what happens is that I didn't study law, but I know people who studied law. So I call them and I ask them, who is a good lawyer? That's social capital. Then I go to the lawyer, and the lawyer sees me and he recognizes the 7 tick man. So, and I know how to click and how to exchange information and how to spot misunderstandings and so on. Cultural capital. Then the lawyer starts sending invoices. I can pay them, financial capital. And then I get in touch with the state, with civil servants, and they recognize the 7 tick man, and they think, damn, he knows his way to the complaint procedure. In the end, he gets his children back. Yes. And I think this is what I mean with the favor bank. It's this ability to call someone who can help you out with something, and that these are massively useful. And so,
yes, is that what you would call being wealthy? Because that's what Melvin, who just happens to be my brother, asks of you. Yeah. How do you define wealthy?
I think I've made it very easy for myself. Are you in the top half or in the lower half in terms of social class?
Of social class.
Yeah. So yes. If you're if you have HBO and university, so Hochschule or Polytechnic or university, that puts you right into the top 50% because you've got so much cultural and social capital. But it's if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a director, if the top 50%, most people who are around around 50%, believe that they're quite poor because they always compare themselves with people who have
to people who are richer. Yeah. DJ Conscious says it sounds like the Old Boys Network.
Yeah, but it's larger. It's larger, and it really involves women. I mean, do not be mistaken. A woman, who has at least one Dutch-born parent, at least one parent with a higher education or in the wealth, and then a woman is also white and cis hetero and has done the most prestigious kind of education. The 7 tick men are 3% of the population. 6 tick women are also 3% of the population.
And so together they really understand each other, because what separates them is that one is a man and one is a woman. That's the only thing.
Yeah. So I looked into all the biographies of the elite in the Netherlands, politics, commercial, corporate, civil service, state, and so on. And so you find that almost all the prominent feminists, white feminists of the past 50 years, were 6 tick women. And it makes sense because, they overlapped with the powerful 7 tick men on 6 out of 7.
So all they actually wanted with their feminism is for the pay gap to be closed. That was their only issue, possibly.
I don't know, but it is striking how their priorities are reflected in feminism. So it's, for example, around Me Too. I think what we've done in the Netherlands, we've dismantled all kinds of social protections for the lower 40% of the job market. So people are now on so-called flexible contracts. Well, that means that your manager has far more power over you because you may not be called up. Of course, you combine that with Me Too. Well, that's just a massive scope for abuse. That has been given, in my impression, far less priority than the sort of difficulties, real enough, that highly educated women run into. Yeah. So it's only natural that your politics is informed by your interests, whether you're aware of them or not.
The one thing that keeps bugging me is that network. When I went to university, I joined one of those fraternities, or whatever you call them in Dutch. And first of all, I wasn't welcome there because this was the early 80s, and never had a black woman trod inside one of those caves of white privilege. So I wasn't made very welcome. I didn't understand what they were going on about. I did not understand that culture, so I left. And anything I ever did in my life, I did by myself. I never had a leg up. I never had somebody I could call. I never had somebody who spoke on my behalf and said, you know what, you need to give her a chance. So even though you and I kind of ended up on similar levels, our way towards that was totally different. I'm sure you agree.
I think your parents were quite well off. I mean, they lived in several countries.
Yes, but that did not open doors to networks for me.
Right. But you may have absorbed confidence from that.
I did. And that's why I got where I am. And I must say that anytime I applied for a job, telling the people there that, first of all, I spoke more than 3 languages, that I traveled the world, that I grew up as an expat, I'm sure that swayed them. I'm sure that. But to even get inside that door, I never had any help.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a friend of mine who shares almost no tics with me. And she was talking about onderadvisering. So we have this system in the Netherlands where you do a test at 11 and then you're sorted out in 3 different types. And so she was given the wrong advice, too low, which happens a lot, both for white working class as well as people of color. And she told me very angrily, said, it's just because my father was a pedagogist that I was saved from this bad advice. I said, so, all right, so your father was a pedagogist. She said, yeah, I did everything myself. I said, well, actually, no, your father was a pedagogist. If you did everything yourself, your father wouldn't have been there or would be functionally illiterate.
Yes. Well,
So
I must admit my parents did fight fights for their children in different schools. We had the luck that we did not grow up in Dutch schools, so that there wasn't this, automatic assumption that we wouldn't, be able to do anything in life with this undervaluation that you're talking about. That never actually happened to us, but at different other situations in school, my parents did stand up for us, whereas other parents probably didn't. So yes, I do count that as one of my tics.
Yeah, but this has been the story of my research, is that I would call up these 7 tic men and I would explain the concept, and they would say, oh yeah, well, okay, if you put it like this, I have those 7 tics, but and then all of them would explain that actually they had shouldered the whole burden themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think the best definition of privilege is what other people have. We really struggle as human beings to attribute our successes to other things than ourselves. And it's just 7 tic men are more prone than anyone, because they always find themselves on the dominant side of difference.
Yes.
So they
never need to explain themselves. They are the norm, so to speak, even if they're not.
Yeah, but their self-image is often, no, but my parents were divorced, or I came from the Frisian countryside, and or I was not accepted in that student house,
or I have red hair and they teased me too.
Yeah, and so it's and also now I give lots of lectures, and people seriously, after I've explained the whole thing for an hour, they get up and they say, okay, so I have these 7 tics that you're talking about, but I really liked salsa dancing, and my friends don't, and so I've experienced exclusion. It's really difficult for people. It's not just 7 tics; it's just 7 tics are more prone than anyone else.
Yes, true.
I may have caught you, Aldit.
Maybe you have. Well, it's not a competition. You see, I'm definitely just trying to pick your brain on this. Let's make a little sidestep to the time when you and I met, when we got to know each other. We both worked for the same newscaster, which was at Media Park here in Hilversum. And we worked at NOS, where you were a correspondent at the time, and I was a newsreader and a reporter. That's another little thing you sent me. Thank you so much for that. You sent me a tiny little clip of you as a young correspondent speaking with our colleague Philip Frederiks. Here we go.
Joris, het is meer dan 4 jaar geleden dat de Arabische leiders voor een top bijeen waren. Dat geeft al aan dat ze niet graag bij elkaar komen. Vanwaar die verdeeldheid?
Ja, Arabische landen hebben hele verschillende belangen. Sommige landen voeren een hele strenge en sterke...
Yes. When was this? Do you remember? This must have
this
been
was
90s?
1999.
99. Yeah. So yeah.
Another century.
A different century, a different era, a different
Yeah.
time warp. What do you remember from those days? You didn't much like that work, did you? For different reasons.
TV, I hate TV.
Mm?
I absolutely hate TV. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because people don't think, they feel. And so words are for thinking and images are for feeling. And so when my colleagues over at my newspaper said, "Oh, we liked your article," they would then explain how it made them think. Whereas for TV, if I'd done a report, they'd say, "Oh, good images, yeah, powerful TV," and they meant they felt something.
Yeah. And you didn't quite gel with that for many reasons, because you're a man who likes facts, aren't you?
Yeah, and reflections, particularly,
but not feelings.
Well, feelings are okay, but they shouldn't govern your political thinking. And news is ultimately, I think, made to inform citizens so they can make an informed choice at the ballot box. That sounds very stern, but this is why I went into journalism. I thought this is really important, that people could get a good, sound idea of how the world works. Yeah. And TV just makes that almost impossible. So I was very frustrated, but I was very intrigued to work on the inside and to be able to see how it works. That even if you're aware of just how perniciously anti-Arab and anti-Muslim most journalism is, even if you're aware of that, it's very difficult when you're on the inside to do anything about it, because almost all decisions have been made for you well before they call you up and say, "We'd like to do a Q&A today."
In fact, let's just spill the beans, Joris, because I believe people know that by now. But when you come on screen as a correspondent or a reporter, and you got the big guy or woman sitting in the studio saying, "Well, Joris, tell us about what happened today," all of this has been pre-produced. They actually tell you, "We're going to ask you those 3 questions, and we expect you to answer those 3 things," right? That's how it goes.
Well, yeah. Well, what happens is they call you and say, "It's like, well, how shall we put this together? And we were thinking about asking so and so and so, and what would you answer to that?" But you're kind of hemmed in both by concision, what Noam Chomsky calls concision, because it's so short. You get 35 seconds, so you can never question the terms that the question is made up out of. And then you're hemmed in by these images. So there are images, for example, available of Israeli victims of a terrorist bombing, but no images available of Palestinian victims of Israeli blockades.
Yeah.
And so you end up with this kind of asymmetry, and it's almost impossible to compensate or to redress. And then people working for televisions were singularly uninterested in any of these dilemmas.
And that must have made it so hard for you, because these are the places where you were based as a correspondent. This is all the Arab world, because you were doing more. You tried to tell stories about Palestine, but tell me how that worked out for you.
Yeah, so Egypt, Iraq. So first I went to Egypt and lived there for a year as a student, also to learn Arabic. And then I did a book about that. What happens when a Dutch guy tries to integrate as an immigrant almost in really dirt poor Egyptian underclass. And then that book was quite a success, and they made me a correspondent, even though I was quite young, as you could see on the images. And so I spent 5 years in the region, covering, say, the Second Intifada, as well as the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks and the run-up to the Iraq invasion. So really high pressure, hard work, immensely interesting. I was at a really good age, between 26 and 31. So I had no kids yet, and immense amounts of energy, amazing amounts of energy.
You learned the language. We have a little proof of that. I found a little clip of you. I don't know what you're saying, but it's in Arab. So you tell us what you were saying here.
أنا اسمي يورس لاينديك، أنا كاتب وصحفي وعايش في الولايات المتحدة، في مصر، في لبنان، وفي فلسطين، وفي إنجلترا، ويتمنى أن أكون صحفي لمدة طويلة إن شاء الله.
I know it's something about England, and I think you're introducing yourself, but tell us what you were saying.
Yeah, so I'm introducing myself. I'm telling them where I lived and that I would hope to remain a journalist for a long time, which I no longer hope. And I hope it's correct.
But what was this about Inglaterra and what was the other
Yeah,
one?
so I lived in Masr, in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Lebanon, in Palestine, Inglaterra,
Right.
in America. ودلوقتي في Amsterdam.
Inshallah.
Arabs cannot say three consonants, so they have to say Amsterdam. They can't say Amsterdam.
Oh, that's like Brazilians. They put all kinds of vowels in between consonants all the time. Yeah.
It's a terribly difficult language, but it's immense rewards because people really appreciate it when you learn their language.
Of course they do, and any person anywhere in the world appreciates it if you try to learn their language, which is why the Dutch should stop speaking English to everybody.
Hey, the Dutch don't appreciate it. No,
they don't.
They scoff at you. They say, "Why have you learned Dutch, you idiot? It's a useless language."
There's so many things the Dutch can learn from abroad, can't they? Yeah, but well, they don't. But because they know everything better, you know that's true. We're going to talk about Inglaterra and Philistine and all of that in a bit, but we have now reached that part of the program that most of my guests absolutely dread, and it's called
On the Spot. 5 quick questions to...
Yes, 5 quick questions to Joris Luyendijk. Joris, I'm going to shoot 5 short questions at you. You do not get the chance to elaborate. I give you the options. You need to choose. And at the end of the round,
concept.
It's a very old concept, but never change your winning thing. At the end, I will give you the opportunity to elaborate on 2 of them. So are you ready for this? Can you answer without elaborating?
No, this is concision. This is when you can't question the terms that the question is composed of.
I know, it's true.
It sits at the root of so much evil.
It is, and I need to get views, so that's why I do it. We're still going to do it, and you still are going to play along. And like I said, which is what other programs don't let you do, I will let you elaborate on 2 of them. Okay? Let's go. Are you rather in the Netherlands or abroad?
Right now in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands. Yeah, that question number 2. Do you consider yourself more to be, I think you've answered that already, a journalist or an author?
Author.
Okay, here comes one you're not going to like. The White West causes most problems in the world. Yes or no?
No.
What happens in Palestine is just simple apartheid. Yes or no?
No.
What is the one thing you'd never, ever, 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 ever do again, Joris?
Write a book about privilege.
All right. Which of these 5 would you like to be more specific about?
I think all harm is caused by the White West. It's just it's too broad, and it's kind of post-colonial in a sense that it still centralizes the West entirely. And so much harm is done by others, because how could non-whites not be able to produce a Hitler or a Stalin or a Mussolini? There was initially with colonialism, all good came from the white man, and now we're in post-colonialism and all bad comes from the white man, but that still gives the white man far too much weight.
Yeah, but if we look at it globally, I mean, let's even talk about imagery. Even, if you go to Far East Asia, people are still doing their best to comply, even physically, to white imagery. So that means something.
True. But I was thinking with harm more in terms of physical harm, war, unfair trade relations, and so on.
Oppression.
Yeah,
So did the White West set an example, maybe, because before
I just-
Europeans started doing it, you weren't seeing it at the scale that we're seeing it now.
I don't know. You look at the First World War. It's unbelievable atrocities of white men doing that to other white men. How does that fit?
Because it's evil. Evil is evil, and maybe it doesn't matter against whom it's addressed.
Yeah, but then it's white men sending other white men to suffocate in the mud at Ypres. And so I really don't want to be an apologist for Western foreign policy, because I've written whole books against it. And still, with this idea of most of the harm comes from the white West, I just recoil. It seems such a broad stroke.
I said causes most problems in the world. I didn't say all harm comes from the white West.
Most harm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ask someone in Tibet.
Yeah.
And they are in Ukraine right now. Yeah, unless you want to call Russians also. Yeah. I'm just so uncomfortable with that term white.
Are you?
Because it's it mirrors a racist discourse from the extreme right to a far greater extent than I am comfortable with. And so if you're going to put race center stage in your thinking, that's what racists do. This is not to say that it's not to close your eyes for the racism that exists. And so I wonder, I just really don't want to carve up my world according to race. I do want to fight far harder, and I've written a whole book in order to advocate far greater priority to fight against racism and other forms of discrimination. But to go along in this idea that race is the number one cleavage just leaves me immensely uncomfortable. I just worry that it plays into the hands of racists.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine who is an anthropologist like yourself, born in the former Dutch Antilles, he says the same thing. He says he wants to tackle racism without using race.
Yeah, that's really well put. That's really well put. It's so long. This idea of colorblindness has been used to dismiss, belittle, or simply deny existing racism.
Yeah.
So I can see how you need to bring race back into the conversation. But still, if now a neighborhood is called in the Netherlands is called very white, or somebody says, "Oh, I realize now how I'm raising my child in such a white way," I shiver. I think, is this really the road we want to go down on? Quite apart from the fact that often what they mean is that it's upper middle class, highly educated, Randstad-based, so greater metropolitan Amsterdam area whites. It's not. They're not talking about, say, gay Poles from Poland.
No, but it's also about code switching. Like when I'm with my black family and my party friends, and there's maybe one or two white people there, I am a different person than when I'm at your birthday party, Joris. I have to be.
Yeah. And so so the social effect of race in society as we find it right now, clearly, absolutely. I just really worry about raising a generation that is going to say the most important thing to know about another human being is their race.
Yeah. Okay, point made. Is there another one you'd like to elaborate on, one of those five?
Let's see, they weren't as bad as I feared.
See.
Trust me. So pure and simple apartheid in Israel. I think that word, just like, leave World War II out of the Middle East and leave the word apartheid out of the Middle East. The Middle East is sui generis. It's its own thing. And bringing in these terms only leads to a semantic discussion, and then forever going back and forth. What the Israeli government has been doing to its citizens, both Israeli Arabs and Palestinians, is bad enough as it is. And so these labels, again,
Yeah, we don't need a label. We don't need a name for it, is what you're saying.
I think it undermines the point you want to make, because it gives apologists for the Israeli government such an easy exit.
Okay.
On the
All
other hand,
right.
to be fair, Israeli human rights organizations have used that word, so there is an argument.
I'm not the first. I didn't come up with it. I mean, I read it in the papers,
it's-
and I hear people
yeah.
say it. Yeah,
No.
yeah. But yeah, it's clear. It's clear what you said. We're moving on in your own timeline. We're off the five quick questions. We're moving back to shining that spotlight on you, Joris, making the world know what a shiny person you are. Suddenly, we see you in London, England, and you're in the middle of the banking world. First of all, how did you get there? And second of all, what is it you went to do?
Yeah, so at a conference about innovation in journalism, I ran into Alan Ruswitcher, who was at that time the editor of The Guardian. And I think I must have said something right, because he offered me a job to come to The Guardian and to do a long
Just like
running.
that. He just said, you know what, Joris, I like you. I get who you are. Come work for me in London. Is that what happened?
Well, I think what happened is that I like you, I'll read your book. And so I did a book about the impossibility of proper journalism in the Middle East. I think building on my frustration there. And he was prepared to read that book. A revolutionary concept to actually read my book. And so he after he had read the book, he sent me an email saying, why don't you come work for us?
Yeah.
So I set out to do this long-running anthropological investigation into the culture of banking. This was 2011, so 3 years after the crash. And so I ended up interviewing around 200 finance professionals or recently laid off finance professionals in order to kind of piece together an idea of what that sector is like and how its culture functions.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. It was completely fantastic.
And what did you find out about that banking world? First of all, probably all 7 TIC people.
No,
Most
it
of them.
depends. Well, it depends. So if you can measure performance, then you will find anyone there. So, for example, derivatives, building complex derivatives requires immense mathematical skills. You can measure mathematical skills. So there I would find French Algerians, Dutch Surinamese, anything, German Turks, anything. But if it was, say, sales for asset management, where you have to sort of, hang out with rich people in order to convince them to park their money with you, then it was quite hard to measure in the end what your role was. Or in deal making, for example, when you try to persuade a multinational to buy another company and you work in teams over longer periods, it's harder to measure performance. There you found a lot of men like me.
Yeah.
And women.
Did they understand you? Did they like you from day one? Did you find the same privilege there that you found here growing up? Do those tics of yours work in England? Is actually what I'm asking.
Well, so you will find, especially in the higher echelons, a lot of sort of the equivalent of what would be 7 tics. So for England, it would be that you're English. You may have grown up in Scotland, but you're ethnically English, like Tony Blair, and then you're a white straight male, and then you went to a private school. 7% of the kids go to private school or to a grammar school, which is the equivalent of our gymnasium, and then you went to Russell League University, but preferably Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, and you have at least one parent born in English
in
culture.
England, yeah,
and then money and education, and a lot of prime ministers and also top-ranking people in both in journalism and in finance and so on fit that description.
Right.
So there was definitely that there, and one word I ran into there, which stayed with me and informed in part the next book, was the word visibility. So when I was interviewing women, working class men, people of color, and I would ask them, what do they tell you in these reviews, performance reviews? So often they were told that they needed to be more visible.
And what do they mean by visible?
So visible would be to ask a question at a session in a meeting, or
at a meeting, yeah.
To speak a lot, essentially, and to be confident while speaking. And
Is there a school for speaking a lot among 70 people? Because they
well,
all do. They all speak a lot.
they do, yeah. But we're being encouraged from early on, by our middle class parents, who look at a drawing and say, "Oh, what a beautiful drawing! Is that a line?" And then the educational system is entirely geared towards our needs, and our parents help us, and they intervene if necessary by giving us tutorials and all that sort of stuff. And then those, so you choose your canvas, so you choose what you would like to be, and no matter where you look, you find men who are like you, who also, or they pretend to be like you. So the world is like this very responsive parent who's mirroring all your needs, and
Yes.
and then you don't have to deal with any of the negative stereotypes. So I never have to worry about being called, overly sensitive gay man, or a false nicht, or an unreliable Jew, or an oppressed Muslima, or a loud working class guy, or an angry black woman, an angry black man, an ungrateful immigrant. All these negative stereotypes that can be just used as a sticker to be put on your mouth, not available for a man like me. And so it is just very easy for us to be visible. And then we've decided that visibility is one of the key characteristics of a real leader.
Well, yes, I get that, because I come across men like you all the time, work-wise. I'm the moderator asking the questions during conferences, and what I do notice is, yes, there's a whole lot coming out of their mouths, but it's not necessarily a story they're telling, or any point they're making. It's just a lot of words coming out.
Yeah, it's just making minutes.
Making minutes.
Yeah, like pilots have flying hours, and men like me make minutes. We just make sure that people see us, and
so
and of course,
the contents don't matter. It's as long as you are modulating, you're making sound.
Well, so substance is a plus. Not always, because if you're in a mediocre organization and you make really good points, people get scared. But
especially if you make them in 12 seconds time.
Yeah, and then but you get away with so much if you are like me, because
I think it's so annoying.
What it means is you're left with this unrealistically optimistic idea of human nature and society, that most people are okay, that what we need is more optimism, that success is a choice. Those kind of slogans, they emanate mostly from mouths
that don't say much.
No, and it's also because we recruit so many people for leadership positions. Out of that 15 to 20% boys with my body and nest, of course they're small fish, because we're not super people. So they're just a limited number of big fish, and that we use them first, hopefully, for top positions. But then there's so many top positions left that we go for smaller fish. So quite a few men like me are really mediocre, and I look at them and I think, I change one tick. Now you're black, or now you're a woman, or now you're gay, or now you're Polish, or now you're working class, and you'll never be in that position.
Right. Yeah. You wrote a whole host of books, award-winning, of course, all of them. These are just 3 that I picked out. But how many books did you write?
7 or 8.
7 or 8.
Yeah.
So is the one in the middle, is that the one that is the same as on the right? Because I wasn't sure it was the same book. That's the same one, right?
That's the one Russ Bridger read from The Guardian.
Yeah. It's about the truth in the Middle East. That raised some eyebrows worldwide. I know that it raised eyebrows in the Netherlands. How did people outside of the Netherlands react to that book, Joris?
I don't know. The French gave me a prize. That was fantastic. The Prix des Assises du Journalisme. They tell me it's a very special prize. It's the first time a non-Dutchman gets
really.
Prize. Yeah. So I was really honored. I couldn't come and collect it. I don't think they like that. There's something else I had to do. So on the whole, I was not given much airtime. So the kind of benefit of the doubt that I can draw on in the Netherlands with my Dutch 7 ticks, they don't apply anywhere else, because also on this
because
program,
you're Dutch, you're right.
I'm this guy with a Dutch accent. But in the
Yeah.
Netherlands, and I don't have an accent. Of course, I have an accent. I speak what we call generally civilized Dutch, which is just one accent among many. But because it's the accent used by the powerful, we don't call it an accent. Just like the British, they call the accent of the Queen. They don't call it an accent. They call it the Queen's English.
Exactly.
And so abroad, I don't have that benefit of the doubt, and I think that also helped me see privilege, because I would be put in situations that were quite similar to the Netherlands but different. And suddenly I realized, wow, this is not how it goes in the Netherlands. It's and I'm the same person. It's the same book, and yet I don't get that benefit of the doubt.
So that is actually what sparked the whole thing for you to write. Let me hold it up again, to write this book, The 7 Ticks. There we go. I think I have it here as well. No. This is just saying that once you understood that in England, finding out that you were not one of the guys as you were used to being, you started talking about that. And you and I were at this conference of the Museum Association in 2019. That's when I first heard your lecture on those 7 ticks. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, so that was 2019. You know, that's how long I've been working on this.
Yeah.
In total,
Yes,
5 years.
Right, because the book came after this. You were doing this already, and then your book came along.
Yeah, in
And
2022.
at the beginning of this year. And I remember I was in Jamaica at the time, and I was reading, the newspapers, and I was so totally amazed at the reactions. I really need to hear from you what the reactions were like.
So in the media, I became this kind of hate figure. And so the 6 and 7 tick men and women really didn't like it. They really didn't like it. And
did they make you out to be a traitor, spilling the beans and telling everybody how things work?
No, because that would suggest that they are aware of it, but they expect you to stay silent. And I don't think they have ever given much thought to their privilege. So no, it was this much more instinctive. Kind of like, okay, so this is about diversity and equality of opportunity. That is something that we have black women for. You're not a black woman, off you pop.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a kind of very instinctive. So they still they refuse to read the book, and they're proud of it because
they're proud of not reading it.
Yeah.
Has that changed? Because that's a question that Evelyn Bruce, who's in the comments right now, asked me earlier. Would you say that it was 50-50 people who read your book, the seven Czech people, or was it more like 95 didn't read it and 5% did?
Yeah, very, very few. And
very few.
And I can feel for I feel for them, because I never wanted to look in the mirror. It's a massively uncomfortable thing to do. And
Why?
I think earlier on you struggled with acknowledging your parents' social class and how it may have helped you. This is just not something we like to do as human beings. We like to attribute everything that went well to our own formidable personality, and everything that went wrong is someone else's fault. And so everybody struggles with this, because there are very few people without any tics. But men like me struggle with it most, because we've always been on the easy side of difference, on the dominant side of difference. We were born in a dominant culture, born in a dominant social class. We've been told from the age of 12 how fantastically smart we are. And then we can't experience racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. So we're shielded from all these experiences. And it's very nice. It's like we tell ourselves, I work very hard, I take risks, I don't discriminate myself, I drink oat milk coffee, I'm a feminist. All is well.
Vegetarian.
And so many men like me, I think, believe that they acknowledge that there's inequality of opportunity, and so they tell each other, like, okay, so there are some who have all the opportunities, that's us, and so we have quality, as they call it in Dutch. We have quality.
Yes, they equate having those ticks with being quality. That's
And so they vote for soft left parties that promise to give equality of opportunity to everyone else, who are then, given the possibility to become like Joris Luyendijk.
Because is that the premise, that they think that everybody else wants to be like you?
Well, they all think that what you need is you go to the most prestigious secondary school, and then you go to the most prestigious university, and then at university you do all these middle class things. You spend 6 months at a foreign university, and you spend you do extracurricular activities and maybe a second degree, and then you learn how to speak in public so you can become visible. That's what they think. And so when they tell you we can't find them, you ask them, so you've hired another 7 tick men. They go, yeah, we looked really hard, but we can't find them. It's what they can't
The trouble
find.
is when they do find them, and I consider myself to be one of those people who don't look like you, who don't sound like you, but who act like you. I do. I just take my space and I do whatever it is I think I should be doing, and I try to do it as well as I possibly can. But that is a thing that we don't much appreciate either, at least not in the Netherlands. There comes a time when they grant you a little success, but when you claim your success and you claim what you have achieved, that's when they start bashing you. How can you explain that?
Well, it's hard to generalize because and so every biography is different, and so, but I would think what happens is that we've never learned to deal with difference, and so if people behave in any way different from what we're used to, we're kind of helpless, which is very different from everyone else, because everyone else has experienced exclusion, discrimination, discouragement, deprivation, at least on one axis. They're either LGBTQ and fighting their way into a cis hetero world. They're either female, fighting their way in a male world. They're either of color in a white world. They're immigrant in Dutch culture, or they're working class and fighting their way into the highly educated elite. So all of them have learned to code switch and have realized that if they are themselves, then they won't get ahead. So they have to adapt, and they have to learn how to take a blow, and they have to develop resilience and a fighting spirit. And
well, there you go. That's exactly this.
Things.
Yes.
Yeah, all these things, and we have never had to develop any of these things, because the world was always, waiting for us with open arms. And so we struggle with difference, and then we struggle to acknowledge these characteristics as true equality.
But in fact, well, you said earlier it's 3% of the population that is like yourself. The rest of us all learned these different what do you call them? You called them something. What did you call them?
Yeah, I'd say leadership characteristics.
Leadership character. The rest of us all learned them. So does that not make the rest of us more equipped to run the world than those of you who never learned of any of this?
Voila. And this is, I think, why on an instinctive level, the 6 and 7 ticks in the media really don't want to take my book on board. They're quite prepared to feel a bit more guilty. So if you come and you tell them that how privileged they are, they go like, yeah, we're so privileged. Oh, we've had it so easy, and we have quality and you don't. But the thing is, this is not about guilt over privilege. It's about lack of life experience.
Yeah.
And so the question for me is, why do we give power to the very group that is least equipped to wield it?
Yeah.
Of course.
Do you have the answer to that question?
Yeah, because it's the basic sociology. If you're never excluded, of course you're the one left standing. If you're not discouraged, not undermined, not discriminated against, and on the contrary, the system is constantly saying, yeah, please come in. We've got all these. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Of course, in the end, you'll end up with a choice of 5 men like me, because everyone else along the way has been either kicked down or has said, "Galas, it's too much. I can't handle this."
Yeah. Barbara wants to know why did you choose to exclude religion in your checks?
Yeah, the one reason why it took me 5 years is just I've been struggling so much with what to include and what not to include. So there's health, mental health, physical health. It's so big. I think you can't. It's on a different level. And then there's region, religion, perhaps whether your parents are divorced. And also neurodiversity. But even if we would say, okay, well, we're going to do 15 ticks, then you will still find a tiny percentage of the population that is on the positive side of 15, each of these 15 ticks. They are the most likely to arrive at a position of power because they're never excluded. But they are least competent, least, yeah,
Least equipped.
least equipped. That's the word.
Because they lack these, especially resilience. They don't know fighting spirit. They get alarmed when you ask them to step up a bit, don't they?
Often, yeah, often. And so I now find in the audience a lot of thick women, or also class migrant women, who listen to the story and then, to their shock, realize that their sons at home are being raised to become exactly like the 7 tick men that they've been fighting at work for the past 30 years.
Yeah, that's something like this. You talking to a room of 7 and 6 Czech people.
Yeah, although do not be mistaken, quite a few of those men who may look like 7 tick men are actually class migrants. We are, when you include class and culture, we are far more diverse than we think. 5% of Dutch population, 5% more than there are black people. 5% is white and has 2 foreign-born parents. They're Polish, they're Ukrainian, they're Russian, they're Belgian, they're German. And then quite a few people in top positions are working class. They found ways to hide this, but they really are working class. They speak a very different kind of Dutch to their parents.
Yeah.
And this is often how the room breaks, because they think that they're going to get a story about white men, but by bringing in culture and bringing in class, suddenly they realize that they have far less in common with the real 7 tick men than they always thought, and they have far more in common with people of color, with women, with LGBTQ, with migrants.
Yet they still have more power than all those, the women, the LGBTQ, and all the others. They do.
And I think their real power is that they monopolize the definition of quality. So they will tell you, like, I'm in favor of diversity as long as it doesn't come at the expense of quality. Of course, we're going for the best. And then they define what the best is. And what the best is someone like themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's also where the little hole in their wall is. We have to start challenging their definition of the best.
Those class migrants that you're talking about, in their quest to become, to be part of the elite group, because that's what they aspire to. Many at least do. Do they realize that they're actually not? That they're not part of the elite, whatever they think?
I think they on a deep level, yes. I mean, imposter syndrome is a real thing. But they have hidden it away quite deep. Also because very few of them have even heard of the term class migrant. It's very very easy to explain. I mean, it's like an ethnic migrant.
Because they are actually, in practice, at least in my practice, they are the ones who kick down. It's not the elites who kick down to people like me or many of my friends and family. It's the wannabes who kick down. How can you explain that?
On the right, yes, yeah. So for the Dutch,
and everywhere, really everywhere.
Well, so it's striking how Rishi Sunak or Sheila Beaverman or Yasildus here in the Netherlands, a Minister of Justice, so people of color, are supporting really harsh right-wing policies.
It's their quest to be part of the group, Joris. There's no other explanation.
Yeah, although I mean, then you would charge them with false consciousness. They may be genuinely convinced of these political positions, but I think only the ones who have these political positions are welcome in those parties and are then cultivated. Yes, but it's true. It's people, the fact that you would change your speech is quite something, because there's no difference in substance whether you speak working class or middle class. It's the same words.
Yeah.
And
but people will look down on you if you speak very regional something.
Yeah, or working class, absolutely. But I've had so many letters from people thanking me. It's not a concept that I came up with. It's Joan Williams' concept of class migrant. It's like it has helped me see a kind of a cluster of experiences. Often also in marriages. So one partner is from a middle class family, and one is from a working class family. A friend of mine, who I considered her quite enlightened, but she said, after reading your book, I've stopped correcting my husband's Dutch in public.
Now that's great. That's
It's
great.
great. It's also
Yeah.
quite painful that you would have.
So she was probably ashamed of her husband's Dutch and was kind of trying to,
Yeah,
shove
and
that
so
in a corner.
that's the violence inherent in this norm, this invisible norm that the seven
Yeah.
ticks embody.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
you so much want to be like them that you are even going to correct your husband in public because
In public.
he
Yeah.
doesn't fit the picture.
Yeah. Melvin wants to know if all of this is in your book. Yes, it is, Melvin. I'll
It
lend
is.
it to you so you can read it. It's
No,
all in
buy
his
it
book.
yourself, Melvin.
What
5
again?
years.
Oh yeah, buy it yourself, Melvin. Yeah, Joris needs another sandwich with Bovril. He can't afford it if you don't buy his book. Joris, it takes us to page 164 in your book to come to what I thought was the essence of your book. You must forgive me, I did the translation because you haven't gotten around to having an English translation yet. Is that going to come, the English
No.
translation? It's not
No.
coming?
No, I don't
You
want
should,
it.
you
I've
should
been
let me do it.
No, but
Let
I've
me
been
eat some Bovril too.
Yeah, but I've been attacked so viciously by a number of activists who have also called me real ugly names, and I don't want that to happen again. I'm
We
really.
have that. I have that every day. I'm still alive.
It's true, but if I want to do another project abroad, and people
Mhm.
Google me, and the first 3 results have the word racist in it, I will not get an interview.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
the public opinion right now around this topic is just toxic.
Fair enough. Back to page 164, because there's one sentence there which I have translated that to me captures the essence of what this book is about. It is the sentence, how can one mourn the collapse of a self-image one shouldn't have had in the first place? To me, that is the essence. Would you agree?
Absolutely. When you told me, I said, all it rules. Finally, someone who gets it. Yeah, so I hide it. It's on page 164.
It's
But this
on the left hand of the page. It's a really small little sentence, and it just jumped out at me because I wonder,
it's the key
have you?
question.
Sorry,
It's the key question.
it is. And have you come anywhere close to answering that question? Are you mourning the collapse of your own self-image?
Oh yeah, I think it's especially the loss of that illusion of neutrality. That somehow I don't have an identity, and so when I defend my interests or express myself, that cannot be identity politics. It's only other people who have identity.
Other people have identity politics. You are just neutral.
Yeah, and so that when I interview bankers, that I don't have a body, and that that the fact that my method in journalism is that I throw up my hands and I go to the bankers and I say, look, I have no idea how any of this works. Can you help me? And I always thought it was a very clever method, and I wondered why others didn't follow suit until I realized doing this book is that with my body and my background, it is so much easier to throw up your hands and say, I don't know. If you're female, for example, immediately all kinds of negative stereotypes pop up. It's like, of course you don't know you're blonde. Of course you don't know you're female.
Yeah.
So it's loss, and you go to a bookshop and you find lots of books about self-help books about generating a more positive self-image. You find no books about generating a more negative self-image. This time, this is a very transactional time. Almost all stuff on YouTube and everything, it's all about investment and return. And I put something in and I get something out, and make the most out of. It's very extractive. And I think what especially men like me, but ultimately almost everyone in the West is going to have to do is to deal with the fact that their idea of the world, of themselves, of their society is far too positive. Around climate change, there's a similar question where we all need to mourn the loss of a world where we can just hop on a plane.
Yeah. But some of us already knew this a long time ago that we couldn't do that.
No,
and I keep coming back to the fact that I call it the real work always gets done by other people. I mean, the thinking, the suffering, the coming up with new ideas, the solving of problems. It always comes from a group that's different from the 7 checks, because the 7 checks just do things the way they've always done them. They even pride themselves in that. We've always done stuff the way we're doing it. So I'm trying to get to the essence of that by trying to think how can we switch that that paradigm that it won't be people like you lacking the empathy and the fighting power and all of those stuff. Make them shift for a while. I'm not saying indefinitely, but get out of the way for a couple of decades and let the rest of us who have done the thinking, who have done the legwork, who have come up with creative ideas, let us run the place for a while. Would that even be thinkable?
Yeah, the difficulty is that if you're going to try to persuade someone of a position, but the outcome of that persuasion is that you lose your job, then it's going to be really hard to persuade people of that position. It's like with the sort of purists in the climate movement. They're basically saying is that we're going to convince you of the need to never emit a single CO2 particle again. People listen to that and think, okay, so if I agree with you, my life is essentially over. And so 7 men listening to an activist saying, it's time for you to make way. They're thinking, okay, so if I agree with you, I have to quit my job.
So I've quit my job, or I was kicked out, and I'm still around, and I come up with something new every time, and I'm still around, and making a good buck.
But maybe if you look at it globally, then your Dutch passport makes you a 7 globally.
As a traveler, it does. Yes, it does.
You're a member of NATO. You're a member of the Eurozone. You're a member of the EU. You're a member of the European Convention of Human Rights. And then living in the Netherlands, you have an inalienable right with your passport to a minimum subsistence level life, access to healthcare, housing, schooling. It's quite something. Now, you take someone your age in Bangladesh. I think if you accept global poverty, it doesn't mean that you have to trade places with someone in Bangladesh.
No.
I think seen from Bangladesh, you and I are the same. We are both utterly privileged.
Yes,
However,
but I wasn't talking about globally. I was talking strictly about the Netherlands.
Yeah, but if you want to understand the psychological mechanism, I think it's helpful to apply it to yourself. It's like if you don't trade places with someone in Bangladesh, to ask a 7 man to trade places and say, okay, so I've invested all this time in my career, but now I accept that I won't be an ambassador, because for the next few decades we're only going to hire people with different ticks to be ambassador.
Well, I'm not saying kick out the ones who are there. I mean, they're going to die anyway. I'm saying when one of them goes, retires or dies or something, put in somebody like me for a change until we can go on a couple of decades with non-checks people running the place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think this is where you can really involve men like me by saying, okay, so we accept you have this job. Your job is usually for 3 to 4 years. Now, your task in the next 3 to 4 years is to make sure that when we go and look for your successor, you have trained up 3 people. Meaning you have mentored them, sponsored them, coached them. You've taken them along to meetings where, according to their seniority, they were not yet welcome. Then you've set them down and talked them through all the corporate codes and everything, the culture. And you've also reverse mentored. You've listened really, really hard to what they had to say.
And learned from that as well.
So in 4 years' time, if you haven't trained up anyone, we consider you a failure. You may have, you may have shown great numbers and big profits, but you're a failure. But if you've done this, then we will really consider you a serious candidate for a promotion.
That would be the answer.
I think this is the way forward, because if you also, you should try this on men. If you tell men you're doing it wrong, they get really annoyed. Try this in your relationship. But if you tell them,
I know,
I want you to do something differently. That's what men can handle. Men want Handeling's perspective. They want an agency. They want agency. They need to be told what to do.
Okay. Well, I'm here to tell them, if only they'll listen.
They listen. I think, the thing is, of course, I've been talking to 7 men who often were forced by their wives to read the book, or by their daughters, or by their sisters, or
always by the women in their lives. That's interesting.
I sign books, and I say, so who do I dedicate it to? And it's always a male name, and the buyer of the book is female.
It's female. That's really interesting.
So I asked them, so why have you come to the talk, to lecture, the talk, and so? And they go like, well, my son is gay, or my wife is of color, or there's somebody I really love, I really care for, who has very different tics. So their circle of affection includes someone who is so close that when that someone begins to report on instances of racism, sexism, transphobia, and so on, it registers. I think that's one reason why some 7-tic men really would like to be allies, but they don't know how.
They don't
And
know how. Well, once again, I'm here to tell them. I see one interesting question from Resonate Productions. Andrea, how are you? Glad to have you joining us. What do 7-check people who fully understand your book have in common? That's an interesting question. If anything, do they have something in common?
I think it's either this circle of someone in their circle of affection. I think some others are truly big fish. So they have the confidence that were we to develop the talents of everyone in society, they would still have a very interesting job. So, for example, Robert Dijkgraaf, who's our current Minister of Education, he has 6 tics, but his previous job was at Princeton, where he lived in the house where Einstein used to live. He is unbelievably smart and gifted. Now, you ask him, would you like to work with a mediocre 7-tic man or with a super talented black woman? I mean, there's no question. He suffers if he has to work with mediocrity. So there's also that just intrinsically motivated men who think, oh, I'd so much rather work with Aldit Hunkar than with, and then I will not use a name that we both know.
No, don't. But we know many mediocre people. Yes, and to be honest, it is my experience. I mean, for my work, I come across people like you, and I notice that there's something in me that they like. I always call it my big mouth. You call it, what do you call it? Agency? What do you call it?
Your intelligence.
And my big mouth.
Nah, but I take that sort of. I endure your big mouth, but what I like is your intelligence.
Okay.
And your moral compass.
Yeah.
Moral compass.
There you go. So because I keep on asking you, but I also think there's something to be done on the side of the not 7-check people, and I think we touched on it earlier. People seem to think that in order to make it in life, to count, to be important, we need to emulate as much as we possibly can white people, men, cisgender, hetero, all of that, the 7 tics. I never did that. I believe that my system works better. I believe that by just knowing who I am, what I can do, what I cannot do, what I like and what I cannot, and what I do not like, by knowing those things is where I got myself. And I'm unapologetic, and I don't ask for favors. I just go my way. Do you think that it works for me? Do you think that would work for other less checked people?
Well, this is one reason I think why people would love to focus on race and gender only, because it gets really complicated when you include culture and class. Because culture and class, culture, for example. So one thing that we have in common, and one huge privilege that you have, is that your codes around eye contact at home were similar to that in Dutch society. If your codes around eye contact were like they were in Egypt, where your way of expressing appreciation would be to avoid my eyes,
yes,
that would have been impossible. There was no way that you would have had your job. You cannot work with someone who doesn't click around eye contact.
Well, there you say something I really have to thank my parents for, because in Suriname, where I was born, it was, like you say, it was considered very impolite to look a grown-up person in the face, let alone in the eye. Yeah. And my parents definitely taught their children, look at me, I'm talking to you, what is it you want to say? Yeah. So that was definitely instilled in us, because you must never forget, I was born in Suriname when it was still the Netherlands. It was still a colony. So my parents gave me that.
It's actually so class. I would definitely give you the class tick. I would also give you the culture tick.
I take the culture tick. Yes.
Superb education.
Yeah.
And so yes, you're female, and yes, you're of color. And I don't know about your sexual identity, but there's quite some ticks there in Lady Hunkar.
Yes, I count 4. I count 4, which is the one I'm not man. I'm not
White.
I'm not white, and I don't have a white parent. So those are the 3 I don't have.
I didn't say you have to have a white
No,
parent.
no, not white parent, but born in the Netherlands.
But so LGBTQ is the other one. So if you're also straight, then
I'm straight.
Then you have 5 ticks, Albert.
I have 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but isn't it fascinating that it's because you've been thinking about this a lot, is that you've been telling yourself you have 2 or 3.
I started out thinking I had 2 or 3. Then I said, no, I have 4, but you're telling me I have 5.
But it's like asking people about their alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
Everybody underreports. Yeah. I've given talks, and then I would be welcomed on the stage, and afterwards, and the lady, and she would say, I've been listening to your story, yours, and I'm so happy. I have 0 ticks. I'm like, look, I don't want to get all too personal, but you're white, and your husband is here, and you're telling me you're the first woman in your village to do gymnasium and then university, and you're from Dutch culture. You've got 5 ticks, but for an hour, she had absolutely convinced herself that she had 0. And so it's not just 7 ticks who struggle to look in the mirror and see their privilege, but it's just we are least equipped to do so.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I will ponder on that, because what I've noticed behind your back, I talk about your book to a lot of people, and what I notice is you get two kinds of people: those people who try to steal ticks, and those who, like you say, downplay their ticks. But there's it's interesting. So the upwardly mobile in their head people steal ticks.
They overreport. Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
No,
so that means that book of yours, actually, it struck a chord, didn't it, Joris? Whatever anybody says about it, it struck a chord.
Yeah, it's the thing is, my earlier books, say about bankers, my readers weren't bankers. But this book is about your body, your nest, and your education. Everybody has got a body, a nest, and an education. Yeah. But it lands very differently. So if you're a working class male white, you have the option to pretend that you're a 7 tick. So if you're a black man, that option is never there. And so people find themselves, and that's intersectionality is such a fantastic concept. You have to include more than 1 or 2. So yes, on the whole, it's better in terms of life chances to be male, but not if you're Moroccan. If you're Moroccan, you're better off female. And so if you're a black man, I don't know if it's black woman, black man. It's difficult. The stereotypes around black men.
Black women are just to dance and sing and not take seriously.
But
seriously.
black men are seen as violent and
and rapists and all of that. Yeah,
and terrifying. And so it's you don't want to get into a grievance Olympics, but it's you have to include more. And then the daughters of Obama, of course, we bring in class. They really don't need any help in terms of equality of opportunity. Yeah, but it's true. It strikes a chord. I just wish it had been given more of a chance so it would reach more people. But it's the people it reaches. It leaves an impact.
I do want to point out, though, that a lot of your book is based on the work of Black women. We are going to go there because you even quote Gloria Wekker in your book, who is a former professor here in the Netherlands, who wrote the book White Innocence. And when you read that kind of clicked in your head on many levels. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think her concept of innocence described exactly. So not innocent in terms of that I would have no moral responsibility of how ignorant I was. But this idea of innocence, like childlike innocence, that you're just not aware of what society is like outside your bubble. But then,
like delusional, maybe even.
Delusional.
Is that the same?
No, it's different. It's just you just have no awareness. Just like most people 10 years ago had no awareness of intersex. It's just not there. It's not on your horizon. But then you do employ all these unconscious strategies to maintain your innocence. And
like what? What have you found yourself doing in life to maintain that white innocence? Some call it white fragility, but I think that's a slightly different thing.
Yeah, so it's, for example, around in the Netherlands with Black Pete, So I had been taught very little about slavery. I was really unaware of the similarities between the stereotypes used to defend slavery and the stereotypes used around Zwarte Piet, Black Pete. But then I never asked any of my friends of color, and having studied Arabic, there are quite a few, what Santa Claus, what Black Pete was like for them. So I was unaware, but I never did anything to break out of that unawareness. And that's what she calls innocence. And I think it's just an excellent term that also so many 7-tick men who are forced to come to my lectures come back to afterwards. They tell me that word, that is exactly, and you've taken it away from me.
But I do believe that many take the word innocence and then go and say, yeah, this is my innocence and I just didn't know. But it's not as if I see them then actually go with that and work with that. How have you been working with your white innocence? This not knowing things and not questioning things. But now that you know that you don't know, what is it you do differently?
And so I try to catch myself every time I want something to be untrue.
Say that again.
So
say that again.
So there's the German word wahrhaben wollen. So you want something to be true, or you want something to be untrue. When I hear reports about racism in Dutch police or in the Dutch military police at Schiphol airport, my first instinct, that is just sort of pre-rational, is no, I don't want the police to be racist, because that's terrifying. Okay, now they're going after black people, but if they're racist, they may as well at some point come after me. It's terrifying. The idea of police being racist is terrifying. And so my first impulse is think, no, that can't be true. That won't be the case. Are you sure? Are those numbers correct? Are you sure? Isn't that just incidents? Now that temptation, that exists also around, for example, sexually transgressive behavior, where since I don't suffer from any of that, my tendency is to think, well, it's not my experience. I don't see reports. So how would this be so prevalent? Same with homophobia, transphobia, and so on.
So now you're telling me that now that you found out that this is part of the problem, you check yourself every time you find yourself willing something to be either true or not true.
Yeah.
And what does that bring you?
I hope a little bit more modesty and a little bit more openness, and that I don't waltz over other people any longer.
You don't what?
I waltz over them.
Waltz over others. Yeah.
Roll them.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the case. That's another thing I learned, is that you're not suddenly awake where in the past you were sleeping. It's you walk down these paths towards insight, and one path is around class, and one path is about culture, and one path is about sexual identity, and so on. And then they intersect in all sorts of ways. So it's not just walking down those paths. You also have to find your way through the maze.
So what has this year? Can you name one thing that you've learned this year after the book was either read or not, but people were talking about it, and you opened up yourself to all those things? Can you tell me one thing that has changed for you?
Well, on the political plane, I've really radicalized. So
you've radicalized.
So we really need political intervention, and the whole idea around liberalism of individual responsibility and the markets solving things, or things solving themselves. I find it harder and harder to stomach when people put all that stuff to me.
And what do you do then? When it happens?
On an individual level, if someone puts out these arguments, I try not to steamroll them, but I do challenge them as hard as I can, in ways that are constructive. But I wish I could do more, but it's of course on an individual level.
There's one thing I know that you do, which I would like to give you credit for. I know that sometimes you decline an invitation to come speak somewhere because the panel on stage is going to be all white or all 7 chicks, and then you just tell them, no, I'm not coming because you need a more diverse panel.
No, I don't tell them you need a more diverse panel. I tell them it's going to be really boring because everybody's the same.
Mm-hmm. How do
Because, I mean,
people respond when you say that?
they get really annoyed because when you tell them it needs to be more diverse, it's as if skin color is what makes someone interesting. It's not. It's the experience of
It's the
discrimination.
experience. Yeah.
So what
yeah.
I want is I want diversity of experience. And
Mm-hmm.
when I see a list of men like me, they all have the same experience roughly.
Well, there's Andrea again saying, don't people in a 6 or 7 tick reality get extremely bored with their lives?
Well, that's another thing that happened to me, but it's unkind to say. But that I struggle more and more to take an interest in the lives of 6 and 7 tick men and women because it's so circumcised, it's so narrow. And I talked to a friend of mine, Yassine El Forkani, who used to be the imam of the Blue Mosque here in the west of Amsterdam.
Yes.
And I listened to his life, and his life is just so much more interesting. Or to Ivan Brave, he's off the Suriname for a few weeks, and he comes back, he tells me these things. And I'm like, your life is just so much more interesting than that of my social group.
Are you just a bit jealous, maybe, about how
No,
fabulous all of us have, fabulous
because
lives we all have?
No, I don't want to romanticize because I felt the pain, and that would be quite ghastly. It's like I wish I had your pain. It's like no, because lijden loutert, the Protestants say, but I think lijden also suffering damages people.
Suffering damages the soul, if nothing else. Yeah.
And,
intersection. The word has been dropped a couple of times. As we all know, that's the word that was coined by the wonderful Kimberly Crenshaw, and I had the immense privilege of interviewing her a couple of years ago. I think it was 2019 as well. What a great year that was. That was the year before the pandemic. Everything was great in those years. You don't actually use the word intersection in your book, but that's exactly what your 7 ticks are about. It's about the intersection of privilege in your case, and not having them in that combination or even only part of it is what the intersectionality is, what Kimberly Crenshaw talks about. The number of ways you can be disadvantaged in society by things overlapping with each other. Have you done some research on Kimberly after your book came out?
Well, before. And so the word is actually in the book, in the verantwoording. So in the, what do you call that?
What do you call that? Somebody tell me in the comments, the verantwoording, the what do you call that in English? I'm just going to Google it.
Where you put all the difficult stuff.
Yeah, where you put, I did this because that. Hold on. I need to know that because otherwise, in English, accountability.
Yeah.
It's the accountability section in your book.
The Brits don't even have that term. So in that accountability part, I do say that I've tried to avoid jargon as much as I could. Which also means that if you avoid the jargon, you avoid the names of those who invented the jargon. Because so if it's not jargon like innocence, then Goya Wecker, I think, comes up 10 times her name. But if I can avoid a difficult term, and
why is that? Why do you want to avoid jargon? Because I know that our prime minister really hates jargon, especially if it's anything that's good for me. He doesn't like the jargon that goes with it.
No, and I think he's by always going on about sociological jargon and how terrible it is. I think he's primed his followers to stop paying attention to anything containing social science jargon. So that it was my target group, kind of soft left, soft right, 7 tick men with important jobs. I don't want to scare them away. And I don't want to give them an easy excuse to put the book away. Also, I always try to make my book as accessible, inclusive as possible. I would like...
Well, you want to sell it as well, don't you? I mean, let's be fair.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, years going to that. I wish more people wanted to sell it because then we would have better books. Most books are just so badly written. And so full of jargon that could be skipped if you'd paid more time, if you put in more time. But it's also, to reach the 16-year-old who's going to, take it from the library. And the 16-year-old, the more jargon, the greater the odds that the 16-year-old is going to think that this book is not for me. So if you can avoid jargon, I mean, this is a rule for life. But it's not like White Innocence by Gloria Becker is a book written by an academic for other academics.
True.
It is. I hate to say this because I admire so much, but the book is utterly unreadable.
It was a big pill to read. Yeah.
And so I struggle a little bit with activists some activists who are really angry at me for not including jargon. But the jargon is what makes their own books so unreadable. And then when people complain about the unreadability, they say, "Go educate yourself." But that's not the way. Book writing is an act of seduction. You have to get people crazy enough to spend hours and hours staring at a page. First, they have to pay money or go to the library, and then pay money, and then spend all these hours. And so, let's try not to make it too difficult for them. In my earlier books about the Middle East and also about banking, there is no jargon there either. And I actually consider that one of my few talents, that I'm able to write intelligent books without jargon.
Well, you know what? I have to give you top marks on that, because, as you know, that was my training when I did children's news. That was exactly that, putting difficult things into words that anybody can understand.
And it's so hard.
It stuck with me as well. I still do that as well. And but you know what? This is
the important point I do want to make is that I do see that why someone like Gloria Becker would worry and perhaps be even angry about erasure, because there is a long-standing tradition if society hasn't simply blocked and sabotaged Black women, and they managed to achieve something anyway, that then those achievements were either belittled or were appropriated, or so there is a long-standing line, and
there is.
I'm aware of that.
In fact, that evening when Kimberly Crenshaw was in the Netherlands, that is a question I did ask at some point, because I call it, and it's usually Black women. Black women do a lot of stuff for innovation, creativity, thought processes and all of that, and it all gets stolen. And that got into the conversation. Let's look at a tiny clip about just that. And I must mention, in the room was Sylvana Simons, on whom we had touched. We had talked about her earlier in the program, and that's how we start this clip. That's Sylvana, by the way, Sylvana Simons, the one we were talking about. Politician. She recently. Sylvana recently asked questions in the Amsterdam City Council about police brutality. And she was, let's say they were very critical of her questions. You were what? Yes, you were violated. She was told by colleagues to sit and behave, and that's what they said. A couple of weeks later, they run with exactly what she was asking. So this is something that, sorry to say it this way, this pisses me off. She does the work, they boo her, she gets all the slack in the newspapers, and 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, it's the same person claiming the exact same question she was asking. Now, I need one answer tonight that's practical, and this is it. How can we stop this from happening? Because this has been happening, we all know it. Our work gets stolen.
And as my general sense is, if the question is how do we stop it from happening, I'm not sure if we can stop power in its tracks.
Exactly, yeah.
What we can do is make it more costly by aggregating the power that we have to exact consequences for that, right? So, and that's the strategy. Like, what power do we have? What would make it hurt that he did that,
or that they did that? What power do we have?
You have to tell me. That's a local analysis,
exactly.
Right?
We can point it out.
Show me.
We can talk about it.
Yeah.
What has been happening in this instance? Make it clear to everybody that they see the mechanisms that are playing out.
Yeah.
So I feel, we should not lay down our heads prematurely.
Right.
We have to go on and doing those things that we have power over.
Yeah, I remember not being very satisfied with those answers. What do you make of them, Joris? I somehow hoped that evening that the revolution would start and that, we would pick up ourselves and make a plan and do it. But it didn't happen. What's your take on it?
Yeah. Well, I do worry a little bit that people would now think that I took exactly what Kimberly Crenshaw wrote and then just, sold it on with a different cover. I mean, that would have taken 5 weeks. I'm an experienced writer. I don't need 5 years
Right.
for a school paper. And
No.
going through all those biographies of politicians and so on, that took a long time. And to analyze the effects of privilege from the perspective of the privileged, if anybody has written or read books where a Semitic man or a white man tries to understand what it has done, I'd love to read them because they're very, very few. That's another reason why it took me so long. There isn't a book like this, to my knowledge, in Dutch yet.
No, there isn't. There isn't. I mean, I've praised you for that openly,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah,
point I
I'm
was trying to
being
make with,
Sorry,
sorry,
I'm being defensive.
it's okay. But actually, what I was asking you is, I was expecting from Gloria Wekker and from Kimberly Crenshaw a plan. So
Yeah.
let's take matters into our own hands. But for some reason, there does not seem to be a recipe for that either. That's what I was asking you.
But there's just it's looking at it from the outside, because I'm of course not an insider in the world of social justice activism. There seems to be a lot of work outstanding, both on strategy, so the identification of goals, final goals. Where do you want to? What is your dot on the horizon? But also tactics. How do you involve Semitic men and so on? How do you deal with erasure and so on? And there's no consensus either at all. So for example, I find myself in a situation where somebody makes a tasteless joke about a Moroccan's ethnic background. Now, I know Moroccans who expect me to intervene. I know Moroccans who would say, "Don't speak on my behalf." What am I to do? You said there's still a lot to be worked out.
So those are the isms and schisms that really take effect.
Yeah,
if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and it's for men like me, it's so much safer to do nothing.
Yeah.
Than to try to be of use. Because you're told you don't look away. You have to engage in self-reflection. But when I do, I'm attacked for centering my own experience. Now you have to speak out. But when I do, I'm blamed for taking up the podium. You have to use your privilege. But when I do, I'm a helper. It's like, wow, it's kind of hermetically sealed. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I don't need a handkerchief for my white male tears. I'm just saying that, like, if you want to involve men like me, it helps to get a sense of agency, what they can do. And it seems right now that yeah, I don't know where I was going with that sentence.
Well, first of all, let me say that DJ Conscious really does want you to reconsider about doing the English version, because he would read it. So
you should have an underground.
That's two people. I think, but this is my take on the whole thing. We were having lunch early this year, right after your book appeared, and we were talking, and I just kind of threw out this word. I hadn't thought about it before, but it just came out. It's emancipation.
Yeah,
and you kind of latched onto that. I saw a light bulb, light up in your head. Can you explain to me why the word emancipation, which I came up with, why that struck such a chord with you? Yes, people, it's my word. Please give me the credits. Yeah,
it's her word. Try to erase her, and I'll come after you. It's
thank you for that. Yeah.
We're going to get this in the dictionary. So emancipation, I think, often boils down to, you have the right, Aldit, to become like Joris Luyendijk. And we're going to.
It's when you said that I said no. I said your demancipation is my emancipation. That's what I said.
Yeah, and so the question should be, what do people need in order to become themselves? And so one really good quiz question is: suppose that human beings had one gender, like some plants, and they were women, and so the entire human race was female. How would the job market be organized? How the economy would organized? would it be the case as it is right now that if you take care of other people's children, you're paid, but if you take care of your own children, you're not paid? Would there be weekends, or would there be a sort of menstruation period every month? Would there be a sabbatical for every woman who's entering
Menstrual.
postmenstrual phase of like a year and a half to reflect? All these sort of things. It's quite imaginable if there were only women. Now, the same question: how would the job market be organized if there were only men? Like right now. And so demancipation.
No, because the men are on top, but the real work is still done in most places by women.
Yeah, but so for example, if you demancipation would be that the economy could have been designed by a woman. So right now, you're allowed to make a career as long as we don't notice you have a female body. And so you look at the women in top positions right now, and it's just striking how often they don't have kids. And that, I think that points to the fact that it wasn't designed by mothers. So demancipation for me is that women can be themselves. And that's currently not the case. And the same for around sexual identity and color and so on.
Yeah, and demancipation for me is what I find you trying to do all the time, trying to stay humble, which for a man in your position is quite unique. And you know, you try to understand when you're being defensive. I've heard you say it twice already today. So that to me is demancipation. I don't want to eradicate men from this earth. Please, let's not do that, because we do need them and we do like them. At least we like many of them. But it's the ability and the willingness to see the position you have in life and to just make yourself a tiny little bit less important than you thought you were.
Yeah, and also that there's just so much left to learn. And this is also one thing that sometimes triggers 7-tick men. It's that when I tell them, you know, I've simply learned so much of what it's like to be human from talking with an open mind and a curious mindset with people with different ticks, and to abandon that assumption that all they want is to become like me.
Yeah.
And
we don't,
no,
right? You know that, yes.
Yeah, to face up to the fact that there are many things they know and I don't. And so that life is actually more interesting than you might think.
Have you made new friends these past months? People that you wouldn't have thought you would be friends with?
Well, I made friends through the research. So it was Corona, and I would go on long walks with someone with who was different along one axis, say female or Moroccan, and then we would just talk through our lives in order to work out how my life would have been different had I been a girl, had I been of color, had I been Polish. And beautiful friendships have grown out of that.
Yeah.
But also it was harrowing at times. I mean, there's so much pain, and I experienced that pain partly as my own. You know, I'm kind of I have this hyper empathy.
You do.
So that has also convinced me of just the absolute urgent need to change the way things are done right now.
So would you say that even if you got a lot of flack about the book, and you know your peers spit on you and I don't know what, would you still say that in retrospect you did good in writing this book?
Oh yeah. No, I just have this real problem with 6 and 7 ticks in the media, plus a handful of activists, I think, who really mean well, but who have decided that they're not going to read the book, but will say damaging things about it. But that just every day, at least one email comes in or a direct message, or somebody and it stops me in the street and they pour out all that stuff. And this has also been very unexpected result of the book, is that people with different ticks, they tell me, Joris, you're a poster boy of the establishment. You acknowledging how unfair the Netherlands is has helped me reach certain areas of pain. It's like, no, I wasn't crazy. Yes, there was there were biases there. Those chances were never there for me. And so it helps them in their bereavement.
And setting their sights on their own path, because now that's what it did for me, and I know it did so for many people I know. It was like an admission. Your book was like an admission. Yes, all that you thought about how things work is actually the way it is. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's not me being jealous. It's not me thinking, boo hoo hoo, the world is against me. It's actually a system, and you'd have described that system. So that was emancipatory for me. I must say.
Thank you. I think that meritocracy, that whole idea that we have roughly equality of opportunity, is a form of gaslighting.
It is.
It undermines people's sense of reality, because what they see, feel every day is so different from what they're being told.
And then you start doubting yourself, because you thought you could be not be like Joris Luyendijk, but achieve the stuff that Joris Luyendijk gets to achieve in life, and that didn't turn out to be. And if somebody tells you it's because your quality isn't enough, or you can't stand the heat, or I don't know what they come up with, you start doubting yourself, and it takes immense strength and self knowledge to overcome that.
Thank you. In one sentence, it's just the fewer ticks you have, the more impressive your achievement.
Say it again so everybody hears it. Hold on, let me put you full screen while you say it again. Say it, Joris.
Oh, people, the fewer ticks you have, the more impressive your achievement, but the smaller the odds of promotion. And that's mad. That's just mad.
It's mad, and it's topsy-turvy, and it should be the other way around. Evelyn wants to know if, with everything that you know now, would you still tackle this subject now if you were to start?
I'm just really grateful I didn't know what was coming, because I think I was just put on earth to do this, without making it any grander than it is. But in my life, of course, it's big, and I could have done a book about the energy transition or the EU, and then I would be feted right now, and I would have sold 200,000 books, and I would be on talk shows and everything. I think it's taking one for the team. And I'm still, Savannah Simons received 40,000 threats in 48 hours. I mean, I have never received a single threat. So it's not that big of a deal. But I'm just glad I didn't know what was coming, because I may have given up. Writing a book, the way I write a book, is just hard work. I look at every single word, and I look at the last letter, and then I look at the first letter of the next word, because it's all about pace and tone and rhythm. And so all those lonely days sitting in front of a desk, it was good I didn't know what was coming.
Well, you consider it a craft. You're not like one of those people who churn out a book every two books a year just because they want to sell books. You actually, Barbara, thank you for watching. She has to leave the discussion. We're over 2 hours going, really. One more. Evelyn also wants to know if you've lost friends or good acquaintances over this book.
Not that I know, but I think there has been quite some discomfort.
Yeah, but they don't talk to you about it because they're 7 ticks, and they like to not have any conflict in their life.
No, I think the sort of people I befriend are quite introspective. I mean, after 2 hours, you can tell that I would not enjoy a frat boy as a friend. But it's painful.
It is painful. Yes, it is. And I've said to you, but I'm going to say it once again for the record. I think you did a brave thing writing this book, and I think there will forever, when we talk about making this a more equitable world, there will forever be a time before your book and a time after it, and that in itself is a huge accomplishment. And I want you to know personally, because this is my program, I can be as subjective as I want. I think you did something heroic in writing this, and once the dust settles, people are going to have to deal with it, because there's no other way. You can't just deny truth.
Yeah. Thank you, Aldit.
You're very welcome, and thank you for writing the book. Thank you,
It is-
and for being my friend these past months. I mean, we've had some fun, haven't we?
we
Yeah,
did.
we did.
Absolutely.
Before I let you close off, I need to quickly tell my viewers that next month, at the end of December, hold on, where's my little thingy? There, on December the 30th will be my last guest of this year, and that will be journalist Friederike Geerdink, who is quite a character in her own right. She has totally immersed herself into the Kurdish situation. She is the one of the top not coming up with the word. What's the word I need?
Advisor?
Experts on anything Kurdish and Turkish and all of that. And I have no time to delve into that, but I am interested. So she's going to talk me through that. And that will be on December the 30th at the normal time of 6 p.m. Central European time. So that's next month. Joris, where are you? You are here. We need to round up because I'm tired and so are you. And I need to know, is there anything I did not talk to you about that you think really needs to be in this program?
I think we covered all base. I'm just a bit overwhelmed by all the kind things you said. So just thank you.
Take them to heart and keep them in a little box for the days that are hard. And then you open the little box and you say, yeah, we got all this still. Yeah. Thank you for being my guest. I've enjoyed all of it. And I know I could talk 2 more hours with you, but we're going to call it a day. And the way we are going to do it is with a clip that I took. I steal a lot of stuff from YouTube. And I found this wonderful Australian comedian who gives workshops for whitey. That's what he does. His name is Amr Rahman, and that's how we're going to play out. And before I start that, I'm going to thank you once again, Joris, for being my guest. Stay in the orange room and watch Amr Rahman with me, and after that, we will round up. Is that okay for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so see you in just a couple of minutes. And to my lovely viewers, let me see. I hope you enjoyed this program. Thank you for being so loud in the comments. It was nice, having you with us in that manner. The next one will be on December 30th. Don't forget. Until such time, be good, be kind, and stay safe. Bye-bye.
The title of this first workshop is called Don't Compliment Me on My English. Everyone who's not white knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? You'll be talking to a white person, and halfway through your first sentence, they'll feel the need to cut you off to say something like, "Oh, your English is fantastic." They're amazed that you can speak English. They're watching the Discovery Channel. They're amazed that gorillas and chimpanzees can speak in sign language. I know my English is fantastic, man. I don't need white people to come and tell me that. And when you say this to white people, sometimes they get very upset, right? Because in their heads, they're going, well, relax. Malcolm X. It's a compliment. It's not a compliment, man. You will never see white people complimenting other white people on how fantastic their English is. It's very patronizing. If you're white and you tell someone who's not white that their English is fantastic, you're just admitting that you thought they were dumb. I have another workshop. It's for white women only. This is a workshop for white women. It's called Why Do You Clutch Your Handbag When You See Me? We can see you doing it, by the way. Once I walked into a cafe and a woman in the back corner of the cafe saw me and instinctively started clutching her purse. Because I was going to steal it with my 10-meter bionic arm. Go gadget bag snatcher. But it's true, white women are conditioned to be so terrified of young black and brown men my age. We actually have to speak differently. I actually have to make my voice higher. This is not even my real voice, this is my white voice. Isn't it sad I can't use my real voice with white women? Just a tiny bit deeper. My real voice is just like, join me and together we can rule the galaxy. Squeeze the crap out of it. I have one last workshop for white people. The title of this last workshop is called just because I'm at the petrol station doesn't mean that I work here. Because you can see, I understand exactly how white people think, right? And I see white people whispering to each other all the time, like, how does he know this stuff? I only admit those things when they're not around. I'll explain to you how I understand the psychology of white people so perfectly, right? I was actually selected as a candidate in an elite training program that teaches you exactly how to think and act just like a white person. I went to private school. White people always smile when I say that, because in their heads they're going, that's why his English is so good, you see.